This is a recording of the short story Jeremiah's Song by Walter Dean Myers. The African people who arrived in America in the 17th century as slaves brought with them their heritage of storytelling. Since most were unable to read or write, telling stories became a way to keep their history and culture alive. Through storytelling, they were able to pass their heritage along to their children. Eventually, local matters became part of storytelling too, as they do for Jeremiah. I knowed my cousin Ellie was going to be mad when Macon Smith come around the house. She didn't have no use for Macon, even when things was going right. And when Grandpa Jeremiah was fixing to die, I just knowed she wasn't going to be liking him hanging around. Grandpa Jeremiah raised Ellie after her folks died, and they used to be real close. Then she got to go on to college, and when she came back the first year, she was different. She didn't want to hear all them stories he used to tell her anymore. Ellie said the stories wasn't true, and that's why she didn't want to hear them. I didn't know if they was true or not. Tell the truth, I didn't think much on it either way, but I liked to hear them stories. Grandpa Jeremiah said they wasn't stories anyway. They was songs. They the songs of my people, he used to say. I didn't see how they was songs, not regular songs anyway. Every little thing we did down in Curry seemed to matter to Ellie that first summer she came home from college. You couldn't do nothing that was going to please her. She didn't even come to church much. Of course, she'd come on Sunday, where everybody would have had a regular fit. But she didn't come on Thursday nights, and she didn't come on Saturday, even though she used to sing in the gospel choir. I guess they teaching her something worthwhile up there at Greensboro, Grandpa Jeremiah said to Sister Todd. I sure don't see what it is, though. You ain't never had no book learning, Jeremiah, Sister Todd shot back. She wiped it where a trickle of sweat made a little path through the white dusting powder she put on her chest to keep cool. Them old ways you got ain't got nothing for these young folks. I guess you're right, Grandpa Jeremiah said. He said it, but I could see that he didn't like it none. He was a big man with a big head and had most of his hair, even if it was white. All that summer, instead of sitting on the porch telling stories like he used to when I was real little, he would sit out there by himself while Ellie stayed in the house and watched television or read a book. Sometimes I would think about asking him to tell me one of them stories he used to tell, but they was too scary now that I didn't have nobody to sleep with but myself. I asked Ellie to sleep with me, but she wouldn't. You're 9 years old, she said, sounding real proper. You're old enough to sleep alone. I knew that. I just wanted her to sleep with me because I liked sleeping with her. Before she went off to college, she used to put cocoa butter on her arms and face, and it would smell real nice. When she come back from college, she put something else on, but that smelled nice too. It was right after Ellie went back to school that Grandpa Jeremiah had him a stroke, and Macon started coming around. I think his mama probably made him come at first, but you could see he liked it. Macon had always been around, sitting over near the step window at church or going on the blueberry truck when we went picking down at Mr. Gregory's place. For a long time, he was just another kid, even though he was older than me. But then, all of a sudden, he growed something fierce. I used to be up to his shoulder one time, and then, before I could turn around good, I was only up to his shirt pocket. He changed too. When he used to just hang around with the other boys and play ball or shoot at birds, he would laugh a lot. He didn't laugh so much anymore, and I figured he was just about grown. When Grandpa got sick, he used to come around and help out with things around the house that was too hard for me to do. I mean, I could have done all the chores, but it would just take me longer. When the work for the day was finished and the sows fed, Grandpa would kind of ease into one of his stories, and Macon, he would sit and listen to them and be real interested. I didn't mind listening to the stories when Grandpa told them to Macon, because he would be telling them in the middle of the afternoon, and they would be past my mind by the time I had to go to bed. Macon had an old guitar he used to mess with too. He wasn't too bad on it, and sometimes Grandpa would tell him to play us a tune. He could play something he called the Delta Blues, real good, But when Sister Todd or somebody from the church come around, he'd play Precious Lord or Just a Closer Walk with Thee. Grandpa Jeremiah had been feeling poorly from that stroke, and one of his legs got a little drag to it. Just about the time Ellie come from school the next summer, he was real sick. He was breathing loud so that you could hear it even in the next room. And he would stay in bed a lot, even when there was something that needed doing or fixing. I don't think he's going to make it much longer, Dr. Crawford said. The only thing I can do is to give him something for the pain. Are you sure of your diagnosis? Ellie asked. She was sitting around the table with Sister Todd, Deacon Turner, and his skinny little wife. Dr. Crawford looked at Ellie like he was surprised to hear her talking. Yes, I'm sure, he said. He had tests a few weeks ago, and his condition was bad then. How much time he got? Sister Todd asked. Maybe a week or two at best, Dr. Crawford said. When he said that, Deacon Turner's wife started crying and going on, and I give her a hard look, but she just went on. I was the one who loved Grandpa Jeremiah the most, and she didn't hardly even know him, so I didn't see why she was crying. Everybody started tiptoeing around the house after that. They would go in and ask Grandpa Jeremiah if he was comfortable and stuff like that, or take him some food or a cold glass of lemonade. Sister Todd come over and stay with us. Mostly what she did is make supper and do a lot of praying, which was good because I figured that maybe God would do something to make Grandpa Jeremiah well. When she wasn't doing that, she was piecing on a fancy quilt she was making for some white people in Wilmington. Ellie, she went around asking everybody how they felt about Dr. Crawford, and then she went into town and asked about the test and things. Sister Jenkins asked her if she thought she knowed more than Dr. Crawford, and Ellie rolled her eyes at her, but Sister Jenkins was reading out her Bible and didn't make no notice of it. Then Macon come over. He had been away on what he called a little piece of job, and hadn't heard how bad Grandpa Jeremiah was. When he came over, he talked to Ellie and she told him what was going on, and then he got him a soft drink from the refrigerator and sat on the porch. Before you know it, he was crying. You could look at his face and tell the difference between him sweating and the tears. The sweat was close against his skin and shiny, and the tears come down fatter and more sparkly. Macon sat on the porch without saying a word until the sun went down and the crickets started chirping and carrying on. Then he went into where Grandpa Jeremiah was and stayed there for a long time. Sister Todd was saying that Grandpa Jeremiah needed his rest, and Ellie went in to see what Macon was doing. Then she come out real mad. He got Grandpa telling those stories again, Ellie said. I told him Grandpa needed his rest and for him not to be staying all night. He did leave soon, but bright and early the next morning, Macon was back again. This time, he brought his guitar with him, and he went on into Grandpa Jeremiah's room. I went in, too. Grandpa Jeremiah's room smelled terrible. It was all closed up, so no drafts could get in on him, and the whole room was smelled down with disinfectant medicine. Grandpa Jeremiah lay propped up on the bed, and he was so gray he looked scary. His hair wasn't combed down, and his head on the pillow with his white hair sticking out was enough to send me flying if Macon hadn't been there. He was skinny, too. He looked like his skin got loose on his bones, and when he lifted his arms, it hung down like he was just wearing it instead of it being part of him. Macon sat slant shoulders with his guitar across his lap. He was messing with the guitar, not making any music, but just going over the strings as Grandpa talked. Old Carrie went around out back to where they kept the pigs penned up, and she felt a cold wind across her face. Grandpa Jeremiah was telling the story about how an old woman out-tricked the devil and got her son back. I had heard the story before, and I knew it was pretty scary. When she felt the cold breeze, she didn't blink nary an eye, but looked straight ahead. All the time Grandpa Jeremiah was talking, I could see Macon fingering the guitar. I tried to imagine what it would be like if he was actually plucking the strings. I tried to fix my mind on that because I didn't like the way the story went with the old woman wrestling with the devil. We sat there for nearly all the afternoon until Ellie and Sister Todd come in and said that supper was ready. Me and Macon went out and ate some collard greens, ham hocks, and rice. Then Macon, he went back in and listened to some more of Grandpa's stories until it was time for him to go home. I wasn't about to go in there and listen to no stories at night. Dr. Crawford come around a few days later and said that Grandpa Jeremiah was doing a little better. "You think the good Lord gonna pull him through?" Sister Todd asked. "I don't tell the good Lord what he should or should not be doing," Dr. Crawford said, looking over at Sister Todd and at Ellie. "I just said that my patient seems to be doing okay for his condition." "He been telling Macon all his stories," I said. "Macon doesn't seem to understand that Grandpa Jeremiah needs his strength," Ellie said. "Now that he's improving, we don't want him to have a setback." "No use in stopping him from telling his stories," Dr. Crawford said. "If it makes him feel good, it's as good as any medicine that I can give him." I saw that this didn't set well with Ellie, and when Dr. Crawford had left, I asked her why. "Dr. Crawford means well," she said, "but we have to get away from the kind of life that keeps us in the past." She didn't say why we should be trying to get away from the stories, and I really didn't care too much. All I knew was that when Macon was sitting in the room with Grandpa Jeremiah, I wasn't nearly as scared as when I used to be when it was just me and Ellie listening. I told that to Macon. "You getting to be a big man, that's all," he said. That was true. Me and Macon was getting to be good friends too. I didn't even mind so much when he started being friends with Ellie later. It seemed kind of natural, almost like Macon was supposed to be there with us instead of just visiting. Grandpa wasn't getting no better, but he wasn't getting no worse either. "You liking Macon now?" I asked Ellie when we got to the middle of July. She was dishing out a plate of smothered chops for him, and I hadn't even heard him ask for anything to eat. "Macon's funny," Ellie said, not answering my question. "He's in there listening to all of those old stories like he's really interested in them. It's almost as if he and Grandpa Jeremiah are talking about something more than the stories, a secret language."